Westpac rescue chopper was standing by near Taree Hospital waiting to transfer the injured boy to Newcastle. It was a terrible turn of events for the Charmhaven family holidaying at Pacific Palms.
He was in pain, and then he started to get all hot and cold shivers and vomiting and in the car. So.
Just before 9 o'clock this morning, Adam Keddy was bitten by what was believed to be a funnel web spider. He was just 2 metres from his family's campsite when it occurred. Adam's mother, June, says it was the quick thinking of other holiday makers that possibly saved her son's life. One of those people was NBN sports reader Mike Rabbit.
There was another NBN Television sports reader guy there. He's identified it as a funnel web. So we rushed him straight away in the car. We flagged down an ambulance at Cape Hawke turnoff.
Young Adam was stabilised by Newcastle intensive care specialists at the scene. Adam Keddy was given anti-venom treatment here at the Manning Base Hospital, and Newcastle specialists brought additional supplies. Doctors said when he left here that he was in a serious but stable condition and was transferred to the John Hunter Hospital in Newcastle. Tracy Walsh, NBN News. Cork and two friends were travelling north along Yarrat Road near Taree. Police believe the 30-year-old was driving the hired car at speed before losing control of the vehicle on a bend. The car ploughed into a tree on the opposite side of the road. Police say Cork was not wearing a seatbelt and an airbag failed to save his life. The dead man was an aircraft technician. Sergeant Charlie Fisher of Taree says it's a timely warning for holiday motorists.
Inquiries are still being carried out, but I can only emphasise to heed the warnings, wear seat belts and don't exceed the speed limit.
The two passengers, Daryl Moy, aged 34 of Cundletown, and Gregory Shine of nearby Cedar Party, were admitted to the Manning Base Hospital. They suffered minor injuries and are in a satisfactory condition. Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
With yesterday's traffic banked up along the Pacific Highway from Raymond Terrace north to Karua, police say the situation had eased today. Vehicles were flowing steadily, with 19 extra patrol cars keeping a close eye on motorists along the major highways. In the Upper Hunter, nearly a dozen radar detectors have been seized. A motorist was chased after being clocked at 160 kilometres an hour in a 90k zone. Over the past 4 days, police in the Hunter district have booked 711 drivers for speeding. 517 have been issued with various infringement notices. Speed and fatigue have been targeted as the biggest worries this Christmas holiday break. While problems with traffic flow have improved over the last 24 hours, police say they're preparing for next Monday's public holiday onslaught. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Concerns were raised by the member for Charlestown, Richard Face, on behalf of Surf Club members who were on duty at the Redhead Club last week. One member complained that when a caller had attempted to get an ambulance to the club to treat an injured surfer, he'd been told that he couldn't have one until he could supply the well-known club's address. Superintendent McPherson, was an ambulance refused to an emergency call at Redhead Beach?
No, it wasn't. The case I believe we're referring to was on the 18th of December, a call to a male person with a fractured ankle at Redhead Surf Club. A call was made to the ambulance requesting the ambulance to attend the scene. An ambulance was sent. The ambulance officer who received the call was insisting on certain details, streets and so forth, but an ambulance in fact was actually sent to it.
The incident, including whether the phone operator delayed treatment by insisting on a street name, is now the subject of an inquiry.
No, that wouldn't normally be the case because most people would know where particular landmarks like surf clubs and that sort of thing are. Now, the Committee of Inquiry's role is to look at the facts and report to the Ambulance Service senior management about the details of the case, and then the senior management of the Ambulance Service will then take whatever action is deemed appropriate in view of the circumstances.
Tape recordings of the call, which the ambulance service has not made public, will be studied during the inquiry. Meanwhile, senior officers urge emergency callers to supply as much information as they can when phoning for help, including a callback number and, if possible, the nature of the emergency.
While the Sydney to Hobart yachts are tackling the Tasman, 39 yachts in this year's Pittwater to Coffs Harbour are making their way north. The leading yachts are battling against strong headwinds as they cross the halfway mark. Mad Men Across Water holds a 1 kilometre lead over a group of 4 yachts that have broken away from the rest of the fleet. Thunderdome, Hullabaloo, Soundtrack and Dark and Stormy are close behind the leader with 200 kilometres to go. Providing conditions hold, the yachts are expected to arrive in Coffs Harbour tomorrow afternoon. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
A field of 22 professionals took part in today's tournament and were joined by several senior pennants players from around the Central Coast. Amongst the pros competing for the $4,000 prize money, 5 times Australian PGA winner Billy Dunk. Dunk has broken 80 course records in his career, an unofficial record. He's also fired the lowest championship score in Australian golf. That was at the Merriweather course in 1970 during the NBN 3 Newcastle 10,000. No course records today, however, the veteran carding a 3 over 72, which was good enough for a share of third with Peter Headland. Ian Brander won the event with an even par round of 69, 1 shot ahead of Ian Alexander. Meantime, a touring Welsh schoolboy cricket team from Swansea took on a combined Charlestown junior team in a 50-over-a-side match today. Batting first, the locals made 147, Darren Martin top scoring with 35. In reply, the Welshman could only manage 118, John Jenkins scoring 36 and Craig Stowe taking 3 for 19.
The southerly wind came away just after 4 with gusts up to 55 knots. Holidaymakers on boats anchored off Wangi Point were caught out, their anchors dragging, moorings snapped.
We just heard the wind howling and just hit it like a ton of bricks. And then we looked outside and we saw all the different boats on the shore and hitting each other.
A drifting houseboat crashed into several yachts before it smashed onto the shore, shattering its hull and breaking up in surf-like conditions. Yachts became wedged together on the rocks, the normally placid lake dishing up a pounding. Salvaging the boats is bound to prove difficult, and it won't be until the wind and the swell subsides that a full assessment of damages can be made. Owners could do little to prevent further damage. It had been enough just to get families safely off the boats. 18 people, including children, stumbled ashore.
On our way down the hill, we noticed all the people from the boats walking up there. We grouped them together and brought them up to the ambulance and assessed them there and checked them out. We had help from friendly neighbours that brought coffee and blankets to the people, and we'd like to thank them.
There was no room for idle hands. Everyone chipped in to help skippers and water police drag the yachts that could be saved off the beach. By now the lake was looking more like an ocean with breaking waves and whitecaps. Other families too were heading for sheltered waters, glad to have their feet back on terra firma. How will you remember this houseboat holiday?
The worst ever. I will never ever get on a boat again.
What have you been through this morning?
What have we been through? Jesus Christ, we've been thrown around on the boat. We had to swim to shore. We had life jackets on, we had kids in our arms, and we just had to go for it. We're lucky we were on close to shore and we just come in.
The damage bill from the blow is expected to run into tens of thousands of dollars. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Every year, thousands of people head into Newcastle City to celebrate New Year's Eve. While many party in moderation, others go way overboard, and that's where the church at the Royal comes in. This weekend, the church will be operating 2 minibuses. If individuals do drink too much, then they can get a lift home.
If they're in a condition where they can contact us, they can ring on the telephone number 262131, but we're actually asking the staff of the licensed premises to take the initiative and make a phone call on behalf of intoxicated patrons.
For those who live outside the Newcastle area, then beds will be provided at the church's headquarters in Newcastle West. The service is only for those who are heavily intoxicated and whose safety might be threatened if they were to make their own way home.
The great concern is that we keep intoxicated people off the road where they're not a danger to themselves and to others, and also where they don't endanger themselves by falling asleep and unfortunately getting robbed or being assaulted.
This weekend will be a trial of the Home Safely scheme. If it works well and there is a need in the city, then it could become a regular service offered by the church.
Prominent identities from various political arenas gathered at Palmdale Memorial Park Crematorium at Ourimbah on the Central Coast. They'd come to pay their respects to the former member for Peats, who'd resigned from Parliament only a few days before his death at 41. After joining the Labor Party 20 years ago, Mr Doyle entered state politics in 1988. He became opposition spokesperson on planning and the aged after Labor's devastating loss in the 1988 state election. More recently, he took on the corrective services portfolio.
He was a cheerful, cooperative, good companion and an excellent servant of the people for the area he was proud to represent.
Tony Doyle was described as a private man by his political colleagues, a young politician whose full potential would never be known.
It's been a tragic time for us the last year. The State Labor Party, we've lost 3 of our colleagues.
Mr Doyle's death follows that of member for Parramatta Andrew Zhukowski, who died from cancer in April, and Cabramatta MP John Newman, shot dead in September. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Adam Keddy was sleeping soundly in his hospital bed this afternoon. He doesn't remember much about yesterday, but his mum June certainly does. The family from Charmhaven was camping at Pacific Palms.
Adam and all his friends and brothers were walking to the beach, about 2 metres from the tent site. Adam came back for a hat that he forgot, and the spider crawled across his foot. He kicked it away and screamed that he was bitten by a spider.
NBN sports reader Mike Rabitt, who's also holidaying in the area, identified the spider and caught it for the experts. Little Adam was rushed by car to Foster Hospital. His mother believes Adam is alive today because of a stroke of luck.
He had started to froth at the mouth and was vomiting as we were driving along the road. And next we saw an ambulance, paramedics pulling out of Cape Hawke. We pulled them over and told them what was happening. They bandaged Adam's leg up straight away Had they not have done that and had we not have seen them, Adam wouldn't have been here today with us.
Adam was brought to Newcastle by rescue helicopter. He wishes he remembered more about that ride.
I'm so glad ambulance truck, not in a helicopter.
The family has cut their holiday short near Foster, and all Adam is thinking about is going home.
After yesterday's seniors event in 30-degree heat, the field of 260 professional and amateur golfers enjoyed cooler conditions today. The two-day tournament, one of the biggest Pro-Am events on the circuit, has attracted an impressive lineup. Former New South Wales Open winner Kenny Trimble, runner-up in the Coolum Classic Andre Stoltz, now full-time touring pro Russell Swanson, and former course record holder at Gosford Peter Jones.
I would say it's the best we've had in the last 3 years of our Pro-Am. The field is much more professional, I would say, in the professional sense.
There were two early leaders vying for the $20,000 in prize money, Peter Jones and Josh Willard both coming in with 1 under 68s. A lucky break for 21-year-old Willard, who was included as a last-minute replacement. Host professional Mark Churcher played some solid golf but found it tough going coming home on 79. A short time ago, Beresfield's David Van Rauwt was the clubhouse leader on 67. A third of the field is still making its way back. The second 18 holes will be played tomorrow, with the leading players hitting off last.
It's a common pastime, relaxing at home with the soft light of a candle providing a mellow atmosphere. But in Coffs Harbour last night, an example of how mellow can quickly turn to mayhem with a candle blamed for a bedroom fire.
On investigations we found that it had been caused by a candle burning on a bedside table, and the wind had blown the curtains over onto the candle and ignited the curtains.
Fortunately, the burning bed was thrown out the window before the fire could take hold. The bedroom was extensively damaged by heat and smoke, but it could have been much worse.
The girl stated that she was just dozing off when the fire occurred, maybe in the later hours of the night when everyone was sound asleep and this had happened. It could have been more serious.
The incident has prompted officers to renew warnings about the dangers of leaving candles and their flickering flames unattended.
Well, candles, they're a fairly dangerous thing if you don't use them properly. We do get, it's a fairly common sort of a cause of fires.
Candles have been blamed for a number of deaths across the state in recent years. Commander Hobson says tragedies like that can be avoided.
The main thing, if you do have to use candles, is to make sure you have them in a very solid base, heavy base, so they can't be knocked over or blown over easily, and never leave them where in reach of small children or anywhere any combustibles can get near the candle flame.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
Robinson was originally suspended for his ride on Hollywood Lad at Canterbury earlier this month for, according to stewards, failing to take all reasonable and permissible measures throughout the race to ensure the horse obtained its best possible place. He was outed till March the 1st, but had been given a stay of proceedings till today's appeal, which was dismissed in Sydney. However, Robinson successfully appealed against the severity of the sentence of 2 months and 2 weeks. It was reduced by half. He will be able to resume riding on February the 9th and can fulfil riding commitments this Saturday and Monday.
It's been just over a month since the second helicopter arrived at Westpac's Broadmeadow base. It was bought by the service primarily as a backup machine if Angel 2 needed repair. This last week, however, both machines have been needed. Since Christmas, 14 missions have been flown. On Wednesday alone, there were 5 jobs for Westpac's crew. The day started with a 6-year-old spider bite victim at Foster, then an injured motorbike rider at Bulahdelah. At the same time, a diver with the bends was being transferred by air to Sydney for treatment in a decompression chamber. That night, 2 people were flown to Newcastle after a crash at Seal Rocks, while another patient was flown to hospital after a near drowning at Lemon Tree Passage.
We expect the Christmas New Year period to be busy, but if this is any indication of what the New Year is going to be like, the 2 aircraft are certainly going to be busy.
The summer holiday period's never much cause for celebration at the RSPCA's Newcastle Animal Shelter. The cages are again filling fast with homeless dogs and cats, some unwanted Christmas gifts, others dumped as their owners go on holiday.
I think it's devastating. It makes me feel very, very sad that we're part of a community that has this problem, and as hard as we work, we can't do very much to prevent it happening.
December again saw an alarming jump in the number of abandoned animals, especially puppies, with more than 500 dogs in total brought in during the month.
The future is grim for most of the new arrivals at this shelter, about 80% of them destined to be destroyed. It's not a happy task, but the RSPCA says it's the most humane option, rather than leaving it to pet owners to find their own ways of disposing of unwanted animals.
What's really needed, though, is a change in community attitude.
A puppy or an animal is for life, and you should give that due consideration before you take yourself an animal home, become an animal owner.
The RSPCA is hoping to get that message across more clearly in the new year, following the recent launch of a media campaign on people and their pets. Ian Cameron, NBN News.
It can bite, yes, yes. It's like any animal with a mouth it can bite, but it's harmless. Most people have the wrong idea about them. They believe that they're mystical, magical animals that go out of their way to kill humans on sight. We're just trying to teach the people that snakes are not like that. If you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone, and they've got an important place in the environment.
The Hunter Westpac rescue helicopter was called out just before 11 this morning after a crewman was struck by a steel cable aboard the Oceanic Mindoro, anchored 5 kilometres off Newcastle. The aircraft touched down on the freighter soon afterwards, a manoeuvre made more difficult by today's rain and 40-knot winds. After a paramedic assessed the man's injuries, the decision was made to bring him ashore for further treatment. The 29-year-old Filipino was then transferred by ambulance to John Hunter Hospital. Suffering minor leg injuries, he's now listed in a satisfactory condition. The weather also played havoc on the roads today. Rain a contributing factor in a spate of accidents around the city at lunchtime. The worst disrupted traffic on Charlestown Road. 4 women taken to hospital, including one with back injuries.
The wet conditions are expected to continue for the next couple of days. While it's been welcomed by struggling farmers, the rain has dampened the New Year spirit a little, keeping holidaymakers indoors for the time being.
"90 cats from around the country braved today's wet conditions on Lake Macquarie for the third heat of the Nationals, the 15 to 20 knot southerly proving too much for some, who had to be assisted to shore. 5 divisions are taking part in the first ever Australian titles for this class to be held on the lake. The event is of particular significance for the 5.8 metre category, with the world titles to be held following the Nationals. Before today's race, Queenslanders led in every division, but it was the South Australians who starred in Heat 3. Jim Sage won the 16 squares class, while fellow South Australian Colin Grundy took out the 5.2 metre division. Newcastle sailor Steve Bruin was successful in the 14 squares class, while local Wayne Bauer won the 5.8 metre division. Bauer's first placing enabled him to take the overall lead in his class, with 4 heats remaining.
The emergency hospitalisation last week of a 6-year-old Central Coast boy and a 70-year-old New Lambton man is proof that funnel web spiders are on the move. Mater Hospital toxicologist Dr Ian White helped implement the treatment procedure that saved the 2 victims. But he says it can be touch and go with funnel web bites, the venom making it one of the deadliest spiders in the world.
It's likened to being poisoned with an insecticide and having an injection of cocaine at the same time. So your blood pressure goes up, you get extremely sick, you can get fluid in your lungs, and people before the advent of antivenom did die.
Summer is the funnel web's breeding season, the male spiders roaming in search of a mate. Rain forces them to seek shelter. Shoes left outside a common hiding place. But those caught in the wet are still a threat too. Funnel webs found in pools, surviving up to 48 hours underwater. The simple warning to anyone encountering a funnel web is leave it alone.
If they're bitten, then the first aid treatment is the same as for a snake bite for funnel webs. That involves resting the person, immobilising the area that it's been bitten, putting a compression bandage on, and sending someone else for help.
There's been no recorded death from a funnel web bite since the development of a special anti-venom in 1980. Hunter hospitals are well stocked. With their treatment procedures apparently working well, they hope to keep the funnel web's reputation as a killer consigned to history. Ian Cameron, NBN News. The New Year rain has brought new life to the Williams River. The Hunter Water Corporation has at last been able to resume pumping into the Grahamstown Dam, which supplies the bulk of water to Newcastle. With over 1,000 megalitres pumped over the last few days, the level of the dam is on the way back up, heading over the 60% mark today. Water stocks in the Tomago sandbeds have also risen to around 78% capacity, while the Chichester Dam is now close to 70% full. The Water Corporation says it's the right trend, but still too early to lift local water restrictions. The rain is certainly an encouraging sight for drought-affected farmers in the Hunter. Good falls over the last 48 hours ideal for summer grass growth and likely to result in an easing of irrigation restrictions. But their counterparts further north in the Manning Valley are positively jumping for joy. They received 150 millimetres of rain overnight, the downpour allowing local waterways to burst their banks for the first time in years.
It's not knowing whether her daughter is alive or dead that's made life for Cecily Zollis and her family almost unbearable.
It's very frustrating because when a child dies, you know they're buried. We don't know. We don't know this. There's no way the grief ever goes here because we've never had any answers.
15-year-old Amanda disappeared from Newcastle after going for coffee with friends. That was 16 years ago, but the family hasn't stopped looking. Soon after, 20-year-old Leanne Goodall went missing after boarding a train at Muswellbrook.
It's heartbreaking. It's desperation. It's not knowing is worse than losing anybody.
Around 26,000 Australians disappear every year. While the majority are found, for some parents the agony could be soothed if information kept on confidential government records with agencies such as the CES, the Taxation Office and the Department of Social Security could be accessed.
All the families want to know is there any information there or isn't? And if there isn't, nothing's lost. If there is, at least there's a finality. They know that their loved one is alive.
Along with State colleague Richard Face, Peter Morris is calling for the appointment of a missing persons ombudsman. He plans to put the idea before federal parliament, recommending the National Privacy Commissioner for the job.
He would be asked, is there information available on record in federal agencies? Yes or no? If there is, he'd advise. If there isn't, he'd similarly advise.
How do we know? We've got no answers here. So this will be the greatest breakthrough that we've had.
Like moths to the flame, these moth-class sailing boats are hurled into destructive storm winds and seas off Sunshine on Lake Macquarie. Sailors have come from Germany, New Zealand, Japan, the UK and from all over Australia to compete in the series, so far led by Emmett Lazich from Pittwater in Sydney. Rivalries are sorted out on the racecourse. Back at the clubhouse, the multicultural flavour of the event takes over. The moth class dates back to the 1920s. It's an experimental and developmental craft, finely tuned and fragile. There have been a lot of breakages in the 90-strong fleet, and late this afternoon the boats were racing toward a rainstorm that whited out the lake. Finals will be sailed on Friday. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Lake Macquarie Council has given developer Greg Moylan 7 days to re-erect the signs at the entrance to the estate off Caves Beach Road. They were put up by Council 2 days before Christmas and indicated that the road into the estate was temporary. But Mr Moylan, who pulled them down on Christmas Eve, says they weren't only bad for business but were misleading. He says that even when an overpass is built on the Pacific Highway, the road will continue to be used.
In practice, it will not be a temporary road. It is a permanent road. It's misleading. It's dishonest for Council to inform the public that it is a temporary road.
According to Council, until a decision's made otherwise, the road is temporary in all respects. If the signs aren't re-erected within the 7 days, then Council will place the matter in the hands of its solicitors, a possibility which doesn't bother Mr Moylan.
We have 3 separate actions in the Land Environment Court against Council at the moment. If this becomes a 4th matter, c'est la vie.
For residents, it's another episode in a long-running battle.
It's just another display of the arrogance of Greg Moylan. This road is constructed on a temporary nature, and if Council put signs up to indicate that, then the only ones who had the right to pull them down would be Council officers.
While the arguments continue over the estate, there is general acceptance about a new coastal pathway being built by the developer. Stage 1, which stretches for half a kilometre, offers spectacular views of the coast.